I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is the Readathon. And I'm here with an old friend. Old friend, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Mel Barrett. I'm the host of the In Between podcast, an investigative true crime podcast. You can listen wherever you listen.
Is it fair to say, Mel, that today was one of the, if not the nuttiest day of Karen Read trial part 2?
Yep. Today I was like, I didn't know what to think about what happened today, and I was wrong. Like something crazy would happen and Bev would have to make a decision. And I was thinking, oh, she's going to do the right thing. I don't know why I thought that. But 2 or 3 times today, I thought, oh, she's going to do the right thing. And I was wrong.
Let's just get right to it. So in the middle of the day, we'll talk about all the stuff that happened around it. But in the middle of the day was another call by Hank Alessi and the defense team for a mistrial with prejudice. Now, this was because of Hank Brennan's cross-examination of Dr. Wolf from ARCA, and he did that thing that he tends to do where he tries to discredit witnesses by saying things that aren't in evidence or aren't true. So an example of that would be, did you consider that there was pieces of taillight embedded in the clothing? Not in evidence, not true. Did you consider that there was DNA found on the hoodie? Not in evidence, and now the idea is out there that there's DNA, right?
Glass on the bumper. You know, notably, by the way, he's done this to the judge and the defense team a couple of times. He created a false narrative around ARCA that she still believes true about the defense's communications with ARCA, including that they didn't disclose any payment for time and travel that he said he learned from a TUI request to the federal government. Not true. And remember that time that he pretended that Yannetti had been on court TV like twice, but it was actually just him on Zoom in a court hearing? So this is what he does. So he did it again today, where he asked Dr. Wolf if he considered the holes on the back of John O'Keefe's hoodie when forming his opinions, and then he held up the hoodie and showed him in the plastic, in the glass.
In the sleeve, in the it's almost like a giant baseball card preservation sleeve. At which time I knew that wasn't right, because we all knew what those holes were. Do you want to talk about what Alessi said when he again asked for a mistrial with prejudice?
I'll take you through the chronology of it and how Alessi addressed it, because he's very particular.
Yep.
So he basically, this is the chronology. This is what he said. The reason for the request for mistrial with prejudice is prosecutorial misconduct, basically. So he says, we have the hoodie, and it's brought to Hartnett, the forensic scientist, with no holes in it. Hartnett makes cuts to the back and the front of the hoodie. Exhibits that they put in right today depict that. And then there's a chain of custody doc that describes the cuts and the chronology. And then the hoodie, Hank Brennan dramatically held up in front of the witness, Dr. Wolf, today, and said with clear intention, that the holes may have happened as a result of the incident. So he was comparing it to, in the moment, it was the road rash on the crash test dummy that had gone like 100 feet.
Because we should note that every time a witness says anything that is favorable to a not guilty verdict, Hank Brennan finds a way to try to spontaneously roll that into the Commonwealth's theory of the case. As in the private investigator that he spoke with today, when he measured to one door and he said 65 feet, he's like, wouldn't it be double that if then he also walked back? It's like, you're just trying to plant in the jury's mind. What he's trying to do is get the jury to say, maybe it didn't happen that way, but maybe it happened, right? So he was trying to intimate that the holes in the back of the sweatshirt were commensurate with the damage to the crash test dummy's clothing done from being thrown a whole lot of way down a street.
Yeah. What I found really interesting is, first of all, Bev, she always interrupts the defense. Whatever they're asking for, whatever motion it is, whatever argument it is, they always get interrupted. She doesn't do the same thing to Brennan, which at this point we all know what's going on there. What I found interesting is that she says she walked into court that morning and she saw the hoodie at the back of the witness stand and assumed that everybody knew that it was going to be used today, which means Jackson, because he's handling the direct of Wolf. And Jackson says, yeah, no, that's not the case. Hank Brennan never told me he was using that today. So that was the first thing. And I thought when she said that I was thinking, oh, I think she's paying attention here. I think that she's starting to understand that there's a problem. But then I was really wrong. Anyway, they go, we're at the morning recess, and Sue O'Connell had mentioned something about, all the lawyers had the hoodie out of the casing. Like they had one of the court, not the court reporter, but
court officers.
The court officers had to snap the plastic open and get the hoodie out and all that. And they're all, looking at it and everything. And then we come back and Alessi's like, I'm calling for a mistrial with prejudice because basically Hank Brennan used it in front of the witness and intimated that the holes in the back of the hoodie, and he held it up in front of the jury, were caused by the road rash.
The road rash from the lawn.
Right, road rash from the lawn.
That was a joke, by the way, folks.
Yeah. And so basically, Alessi said, I want to put in 2 new exhibits, and they were both pictures. One of the pictures was the hoodie before it went to Hartnett, and the second one was a picture of the hoodie after it left Hartnett with all the cuttings. And he said these come from the Commonwealth's discovery, which they've never entered into evidence. So they're now entering them in as exhibits. They will go to the jury. Alessi got up. He was very upset, and he said, basically, what could be more misleading than this? The Commonwealth picks the most opportune, sensitive times to pull these kinds of stunts. It was intentional, irremediable, misleading.
Trial by ambush, perhaps?
Yeah.
Which happened several times today.
And the thing is, it's specific to the main point of this case, which is the collision, if the collision happened. And he's like, this comes mere days after the Commonwealth raised the specter of the DNA on the hoodie. And Bev, in that moment, interrupts him and says, move on. And he's trying to make the point that this is cumulative. This is happening a lot. Basically, the Commonwealth was trying to discredit Wolf by saying he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't do his full job if he didn't examine those cuts on the hoodie. And Wolf is constantly saying that Dr. Rentschler handles the body issues.
That's right. He said it over and over and over. He's not talking about, he doesn't want to talk about abrasions on the arm or lacerations or anything. He's like, that I stop at what happened to the clothes.
Right.
That's where I stop. Right. And then it got into this ridiculous conversation about, were the clothes new? Had you washed them? Did they have any wear? And I'm like,
anywhere.
There's no evidence as to the age that John O'Keefe's sweatshirt was when he wore it. We don't know that it wasn't brand new or 10 years old. We don't know. And they got the exact same one with the exact same fabric, which is a pretty decent control. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, Alessi's like, he can't, to Bev, he can't even think of how to remedy this in front of the jury. It shouldn't fall on the defense. It should fall on the Commonwealth. Karen Reed should have a fair trial. And this is the antithesis of a fair trial, and her rights have been trampled on. And then he also was like, it's clear that the more desperate the Commonwealth becomes, the more they're resorting to conduct like this.
Yes.
And Hank Brennan gets up, and I'm like, what the hell? What is he going to say? And he's like, well, I didn't have a lot of time to look over all the files. Basically, I'm new here, so it seems like I made a mistake.
Same thing he did with the court TV thing. Same thing he did with the thing where he said he put in a TUI request, and that's the only reason he had the emails he said I made a mistake. What that means is I got caught in a lie. Because I'll tell you, damn straight, even if for some reason he didn't know those holes were made by the lab tech, Lally and McLaughlin certainly knew that those holes were made by the lab tech. And as
it's been like this for 3 years.
As Judge Cannoni has said, what one of you knows, all of you know. That is the responsibility of a legal team.
When he said that he made a mistake, somebody said something in the courtroom, like in the audience. I don't know who it was. I don't know what it was. I couldn't hear it. But I saw him look to the side. It was a really strange moment. But yeah, he was basically like, yeah, I made a mistake. Yeah, I agree. Those cuttings were made by Hartnett, and we should totally instruct the jury and maybe strike the testimony. And then a Bev immediately, she's going to put the reports into evidence, meaning the photos. She's going to instruct the jury that during the cross of Wolf about the hoodie, and that they're not to draw any inference that these holes happened during the incident, but she is not even considering a mistrial. They didn't meet their burden.
Right. And she's also not going to give the instruction a lot of oomph, which is what Alessi wanted. He wanted the same oomph that she gave to the rock instruction, which was that was not there. He wanted and she essentially said those holes were made by the lab tech, but she didn't make it seem like It didn't have the emphasis of The Rock. And then
we get into it again at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, because he wants to talk about this again tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to file a motion.
What are they going to say?
Well, they don't think that what she said was good enough.
Yeah.
So he was allowed to hold we came back from lunch and he was allowed to hold the hoodie up and Vanna White it down the line of the jury.
Yeah.
And then she basically was like, so you're seeing this sweatshirt. I just need you to know that these, cuts were made by Hartnett, the forensic scientist.
Do you think the jury understands that they've been, at the very least, misled, at the worst, lied to intentionally?
I think they're starting to get to it. Bev said so many times today, well, at least 3, I should say, that the jury is over it.
She can tell they're fed up.
They're fed up. And I'm like, yeah, with you and Brennan, because like the antics that are happening here are ridiculous. If they just listened to testimony, they watched Brennan hold that hoodie up, they watched him and listened to him question Wolf. They're all taking notes. And then they come back an hour later and she says, oh, by the way, she doesn't say the testimony you just heard was wrong. She only says, make note that those holes came from Hartnett.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so he's gonna, and then she has the audacity she's trying to read out what she's gonna say for the instruction to the defense. And Alessi's like kind of arguing a little bit with her, but then Jackson sort of leans over and they're consulting each other. And she literally goes, this is what I'm gonna say. So if you're not gonna listen, whatever. And then Jackson has to say, I'm sorry, we're really not trying to
be disrespectful,
offend the court. We're just consulting one another.
Yeah.
Like her instinct is to jump to the defense doing something wrong.
Always.
Even when they're right.
Always. Always, always, always. Even when they're clearly right. I just want to say, so one of the things that got pointed out today by, I believe it was Jackson correctly, is that there was a motion to limit what Dr. Liposada can say, which is infuriating how that ended up. There's a motion now to limit what Rentschler can testify to. And as Jackson rightly pointed out, this is actually what trial by ambush looks like, which is why, Hank Brennan, like I said, he's always telling on himself, like what it is he complains about is what he's actually planning to do.
Yeah.
There was a deadline to file responses and he could do motions in limine before the case started. And he didn't do the stuff by March 7th. He was supposed to do around Liposada. And he didn't have to just, submit the stuff by May 8th or whatever he was supposed to do with. And she's still letting the Commonwealth argue about what witnesses can or can't say. They did a whole voir dire today of Liposada. It sounds like they're going to do another one tomorrow about whether she can talk about another thing. It's wild. It's really, really wild. So I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the substance of testimony today. I mean, a lot of what she decided was infuriating. She decided that Dr. Liposada can't speak to dog bite injuries, which is incredible. Let me tell you what Colin Miller posted. Colin Miller is at the University of South Carolina School of Law. He's a really well-respected law professor. He writes amicus briefs for the Supreme Court. And he had the podcast Undisclosed, which has so far helped like more than a dozen people get out of prison, or 20 or something. Anyway, he wrote about the decision around Dr. Liposada not being able to testify this way. Quote, "This seems like the first truly undeniable error in the Karen Reed trial, not allowing a medical examiner to testify regarding dog bites and pattern recognition. It's hard to convey just how low the bar is for expert testimony." Then he cited a bunch of case law, and and why some case law would apply and some wouldn't. But he said, if there's a conviction, expect this quote from many Massachusetts cases to be heard at the heart of appeals. Quote, "It is well established that the professional specialty of a medical practitioner offered as a witness need not be precisely and narrowly related to the medical issues of the case." Meanwhile, we have Welcher talking about injuries. We've got Mr. Brain Doctor from Florida, coming in talking about not just what the injuries were, but how he believes it was caused. It's really something. It's really, really amazing what is happening.
Well, especially after Bev was one of the ones who questioned her during the voir dire, and she said, "How many dog bite cases?" And Dr. Liposada said 50 plus.
Yep.
And she said, how many have you supervised? She said 75 plus or more.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and then when was the last one? It was a couple of years ago. This woman has done 125 dog bite cases. Is anyone investigating, Bev?
I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know how much it's, I talked to somebody over the weekend who knows a relative of Bev's. And their take,
Spill the tea, please.
Was Bev just wants to retire and spend time with her grandkids.
Yeah.
That's all she wants to do. And that's all she's thinking about right now is getting out of here, spending time with the grandkids, and not doing this job anymore. And I think that actually it sort of speaks to what I've been saying is that she seems checked out. She seems disengaged. Mm-hmm. And she seems to have what I call a cognitive decline is like, it doesn't have to be like a medical condition, but her sharpness in terms of paying attention, rulings, memory from what happened in court has definitely eroded from what I understand she was like before, because I've heard great things about her from before. So anyway.
She just wants to get to the Cape and pour a cold glass of Pinot Grigio.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about Dr. Wolf. He was back on the stand today. He got his direct testimony got finished. He got cross-examined, redirected, recrossed, redirected, recrossed. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was about math. I mean, Brennan is really hung up on this weight of the arm thing. His calculation of 26% was incorrect, but as Dr. Wolf pointed out, it does not matter.
No.
Because, if anything, you'd want John O'Keefe's arm to be lighter because then there's less of a chance of there being like catastrophic injuries because there'd be less force, right?
If his arm is heavier, it's going to be broken.
Yeah. Well, his arm was going to be broken no matter what. I think with those low speed videos, those high speed videos shown in low speed showed us is that with any kind of impact, the hand, the shoulder, the arm, we're all going flippity flop. And mathematically speaking, it is impossible for the car to, quote, push you and embale taillight pieces in your arm. It's impossible. What he was calling a push is 10 milliseconds of contact. Mm-hmm. People should understand a millisecond is a thousandth of a second. So 10 1,000ths of a second of contact. A blink of an eye is between 100 and 400 milliseconds. So this is 1/10 the shortest eye blink of what contact would have happened at these speeds. And it's not a push, it's contact, and then the things move in the same direction. And those taillight pieces could not possibly get ahead of the arm. They could go out, they could do whatever, but there's just no mathematical possibility of them embedding themselves, which this has kind of seemed to be what most of the testimony was about. After the jury seemed to be enjoying doing mathematical formulas in their little notebooks, I think what I read was that they had their arms crossed during all these recrosses.
Sue O'Connell said that two of them had their head in their hands on their knees, basically, and they were laughing along with Jackson when he made, a joke, but they were getting frustrated with Hank. And I'll be honest, I was so annoyed this morning with him. The testimony went on from Hank, and he just spent the whole morning being snarky and, objections and blah, blah, blah. And it just went on too long. He just keeps doing this. He doesn't know when to sit down. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a lawyer, so I feel weird, critiquing him at all. But as if I were on the jury, I would be like, dude, just sit down. Just stop. You've made your point.
We get it. We get it that you think that the arm should be a different weight. We get it.
Yeah, we get it.
Yeah. And it's funny because the funny thing that came up as a result of this is the badgering, that the rescue Randy isn't a crash test dummy. And he's like, I disagree with that. He's just a different kind of crash test dummy. It's a mannequin, isn't it? And it's like, well, you know why I used that? Because your expert used it. That's why.
Did you hear Brennan say, Randy's no dummy? Did you hear him say that?
I did. Was he trying to be funny?
He was trying to get a laugh out of them the way that Jackson did when Jackson was like, don't use those crazy figures or whatever he said. Don't do it, you know? And the jury laughed. And then Brennan said, Randy's no dummy.
Nope.
And nobody laughed.
All right. Can we talk about John Tiedemann or Tiedemann, however you pronounce his name?
I guess. What the frig is the point? I mean, I know what the point is.
I know what the point is too. So John Tiedemann is a private investigator that the defense very recently hired, I guess because their original investigator is sick. He was not allowed to show a photo that I think would have been important to show. But basically what he did was he went to 34 Fairview. He spoke to the homeowner who let him have access to the property, which I think is super interesting.
Inside.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
The garage.
So interesting. So they let him into the property. He made measurements with one of those wheelie things these people on the roads using. He made measurements to they showed photos of the side garage door, and that little side garage door, little red door is open.
It's open.
Once again, confirming that my theory is definitely 100% right, because not only am I a lawyer and a pathologist, I am also a psychic. And he measured, from about where Ryan Nagel said Karen Reed's car was, in front of the mailbox, to the front door, to the side door, and to the open garage door. And I got to say, the feet between 65 and 80 for all of them kind of line up with those steps moving westward. So Brennan came up with a very strange thing during cross, where the only questions he had for this guy were, so if it's 65 feet to that door, would it also be 65 feet away from the door? And that would equal 130. And he was like, yes. And I'm like, is this yet another brand new possibility of your theory of what happened that you're going to throw in there, that he went to the door, came back, and then she hit him with the car? It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. But this was very straightforward, and I think speaks to, it was supposed to be, he was laying the foundation for what La Posada was going to say, that now she's very limited in being able to say, right?
She's so limited. She can't talk about dog bites at all.
No.
She can't talk about dog bites at all. I think even her medical examiner testimony is going to be limited to. I don't understand why Bev thinks that's okay.
Yeah, it's not. It's actually really not okay. It's not okay.
And it's a woman who has 40 plus years of experience. She's overseen 10,000 autopsies.
That's right. Yep. She teaches at an Ivy League medical school. She used to be the medical examiner for the state of Rhode Island. When she started reading her awards and citations, it was like, okay, this is getting boring. You've gotten too many awards. Can you stop reading them?
Meanwhile, none of the experts, they probably should have done a voir dire on Burgess.
100%. They asked for one. She said no.
It shows her bias in that her immediate response is, well, we're going to have to, she's the one who came up with voir dire today.
Right.
They didn't ask for it. Nobody asked for it. She said we have to do it. They said we don't need to. And she said, yeah, we're going to do it. And so she's forcing all of the defense's experts to go through voir dire, and then she's limiting what they can say, and she's not even contemplating voir dire for any of the prosecution's witnesses or experts. And it's like, yeah, maybe you should have done that with Burgess, because then you'd know that he was lying about his education.
Right.
I know that she's tired, and I know that she wants to go hang out with her grandkids, but a woman's life is on the line and a man is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And Jackson had to remind her of that today, that this is a murder trial. Mm-hmm. And, we're not wasting anyone's time. We're not wasting the jury's time. This is a murder trial. Someone's life is on the line. But I just am like, I know you want to get out of here, Bev, but maybe you should have retired before this case then.
Yeah, I think perhaps, or she should have stepped down from being the judge in the second trial.
When she was asked to recuse herself, she should have done it.
Oh, 100%. So can we talk about we did get some good testimony from Dr. La Posada today. We're not finished with her. I think he needs a lot more time with her. And then there's going to be a cross, obviously. But one of the things that she talked about, and I think with a tremendous amount of authority, was the nature of the injury to John O'Keefe's head. So let's talk about that injury. So what did she say on the stand? What was that called, and what is all that all about? Yeah,
so she talked again, we've heard the words before, but this coup contra coup, which is, I'm saying, blunt force trauma from a fall, because that's sort of how she characterized it. But really what's happening is the head is getting hit so hard that the brain is moving around. And basically at the site of impact is where there's damage. And then 180 degrees opposite of that, there's also damage. So John's injuries were consistent with a coup contra coup. She says that John fell backwards onto something that has a ridge to it. It was not a flat surface. He had massive skull fractures in the back that came around to the front under the base of his brain, that's what caused the bleeding in his upper eyelids, because basically the bones behind his eyelids were broken by his brain. Like that's what fractured as well. And that's where he had those raccoon eyes. But he also had really irregular scrapes of skin around the wound in the back of his head. Couldn't have been a, perfectly flat surface. He had a bruise on the front and the back of the brain, which kind of shows you that his brain kind of like went, back and forth like that. And that when his brain slapped forward, that's when those bones broke. One of the most interesting things I found in her testimony was about the laceration, which we were just getting into.
Yep. And
then Bev called it. And I was just like, come on. But so the laceration above the eye, it's a separate injury altogether, she says. It could be from Jackson says, could it have come from an object? And she said yes. And could it have come from a fist? And she says yes.
Objection.
Something small. Objection.
I guarantee
sidebar.
Hank would have been allowed to ask that question. Yeah. And what I thought was, it was really brutal the way she described the injury, but she was talking about that irregular scrapes of skin around the wound. And there is, I'm not encouraging people to look at the pictures of John O'Keefe's wound. It's brutal. And if you have a strong stomach and you can separate yourself from that, do it. But if you don't, I'm not encouraging you to. But there is, near the laceration where he broke his skull, a J-shaped indentation, which almost looks exactly like a Nike swoosh. I know it's not a Nike swoosh, but that if you want to compare the J shape, that's what I'm talking about. And it appears to be like he fell on something. Something was scraped the back of his head, and whatever it was like clicked him there because he has that little indentation. But yeah, I think that the defense thinks it was in the garage, whatever happened.
I agree with you and your theory. I think your theory is pretty spot on.
And I think it happened around, for the people who are listening who disagree with me about data and so forth, I think whatever happened around 12:25, not at 12:32. And I think if there was a phone, messing with the phone situation, it could have happened after he fell. Perhaps somebody grabbed his phone and they were thinking, let's text Karen and say, go home or something. And then maybe noticed she was gone. But they could have opened the phone with his face if he was just lying there dazed or lying there unconscious. They could have opened the phone and used it. I don't necessarily think that last phone activity was him, but I think that whatever happened to him happened much earlier. I really do, than 12:32.
Well, we have to go back to, we've said this so many times, that she arrived at and got on the Wi-Fi at his house at 12:36.
Correct.
And it takes, on a good day with no snow and not drunk, it takes about 6 to 8 minutes to get there.
Right. Unfortunately, we can't know what time she left because the footage that would have captured her at the time after she left from the library is missing.
Yeah, imagine that. Just like the footage of Berkowitz and Higgins in the Sallyport is missing. So yeah, it sounds to me like the defense is positing, which is your theory, that he was probably punched in the face, hit over the eye with something or a fist, and fell back and hit his head on something really hard on the ground in the garage.
Ridged.
And that makes total sense.
Something ridged. Yes.
Yep. Oh, one other thing, I just want to go back to Wolf for just 1 second, but one of the things that Alan Jackson was able to establish, which I thought was super powerful on his, one of his, I think it was his redirect. He asked Wolf, have you ever heard of, being hit out of your shoes?
Yeah.
And Wolf was like, yeah, I think that's, something that people say when there's a car accident. And he said, where were Rescue Randy's shoes? And he said, both of them were on his feet.
Yeah.
Because the prosecution has been pushing that theory. They've had cops testify about it. They, had people hold up the two different sneakers.
And he's talking about the direct impact test that they did, because
the 29 mile an hour back of the car.
Yeah, the getting hit out of your shoes. Everything that I know about it from the research I've done is that happens when you are hit hard enough with enough of an impact where you literally fly out of your shoes. That's not a clip, as Hank Brennan likes to call it, a clipping hit or a side swipe. That is a direct impact hit. And even when they did the direct impact hit, his shoes stayed on his feet. So
yeah, I thought that was really powerful for the jury to hear finally. But I think, we basically, La Posada, she had to go through a voir dire. Her testimony got cut off just right after she started getting into John's injuries. She sent the jury home. We're going to come back tomorrow. There's going to be motions in the morning. Alessi is saying that he's coming with a motion about the
curative instruction.
the curative instruction that she gave today, she seemed pretty pissed about that, actually. She's like, I already said what I said. I said what I said.
I said what I said.
I said what I said. And she's like, well, file something with me and I'll look at it. But, I'm a little bit nervous because after La Posada, Dr. Rentschler is coming, and that's the defense's last witness.
Yes, and then the prosecution looks like has a rebuttal.
They have a rebuttal, and they have 3 or 4 more witnesses. The fact that the prosecution is going to bring more witnesses than the defense has left is just nuts. It sounds like basically the defense says they don't have the names of the rebuttal witnesses yet. And then the judge listed off a bunch of names, but she got somebody wrong or she missed somebody. It was Kuhn, Crosby, Gillespie, and Hartnett. Brennan said he's not calling Gillespie or Crosby. So the defense doesn't know anything about what's going on with these rebuttal witnesses, but it seems like the judge and Brennan know what's happening. So
if I got Hartnett back on the stand, I'd want to talk about the pieces of taillight again. I don't want to be like, so tell me more about the clothing, the envelope, and the taillight fragments. Let's talk about that some more. And I think it was maybe the other tech who physically did the spatula thing, but Hartnett was her boss, right?
Yeah. It might have been the other way around.
All of the lab tech witnesses were the same to me because that was the hands down the most boring part of the trial. Yeah. I hate to call this trial boring because it hasn't been, but if there was a part that was boring, it was anybody that Adam Lally questioned, and that included the lab techs.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of those things where I don't think Brennan realizes what he's doing. He's giving Alan Jackson another crack at these witnesses.
And Orlesi, yeah.
Orlesi.
Yep.
Yeah, and Brennan's already, he put in a motion and is objecting to a bunch of Rentschler's report.
I know. I saw.
He's saying that the slides they provide credibility representations about Welcher and improper summaries and stuff like that. You really don't want these ARCA guys to go still because you don't have a case and they crush you.
Yeah. 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 They also make your experts look bad and you don't know how to cross-examine them because you're not good at math. No one is as good at math as people who do these kinds of jobs. And
right.
That Alan Jackson used to be an Air Force mechanic, right? When he was in the service.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was in the Air Force and he was an engine mechanic in the Air Force.
I had no idea.
He knows some math. Air Force Academy
He's got muscles.
Is no joke, by the way.
He's got muscles.
Have
you ever seen him in a t-shirt?
Who, Jackson?
Yeah,
they all do. They're all jacked. Yannetti is jacked.
True. And so is Alessi. I sent you that picture.
Jacked.
I had no idea, and he was all he was flexing for the camera. I was like,
yeah, the three of them are fit as hell. I think Liza Little is also fit. I think these people are all getting up at 4 and hitting the gym because you see them eating. They're not eating healthy necessarily during this trial. They're eating steak and drinking vodka and going to Italian restaurants in the North End. So
well, Bev says she regrets giving them last Thursday off.
I regret it too, Bev. Although it did give me a break. I will say, for those who are listening, I will be back on Court TV tonight on the Vinnie Politan Investigates show. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the investigates part of the show is, but I'm sure if I go on a couple more times, that will become clear to me. And I will be on with a very anti-Karen Reed personality named John DiPietro.
Yeah, DiPietro.
And we'll be talking about some of the ARCA testing and compared it to Judd Welcher's testing. So it should be interesting. We'll see how it goes.
I'm proud of you. I think that you're doing a great job.
Yeah, little lady.
Yeah. I can't believe this is, it doesn't feel like it's going to be over anytime soon. I thought we were going to be done this week. I'm not sure we're going to be done this week.
No, I'm not sure either, especially if he's going to call so many people after.
Well, Jackson says he needs about 4 hours with Dr. Rentschler. Mm-hmm. And then Brennan's going to need 2 to 3 hours with him. That's 7 hours of testimony just on Rentschler.
And that's a day and a half, given this court schedule. And then there's going to be redirect, recross, and redirect. So that's going to be 2 days, probably.
Yeah. So I think we're looking at right now, we'll probably start with Rentschler tomorrow.
No, we haven't finished La Posada yet.
But I think that they said that they only had an hour or so left with La Posada. I don't know. I would assume we're going to get through La Posada tomorrow and we might start with Rentschler. She said it was going to be a full day.
We'll have a break after La Posada. These people must really have to pee a lot. They get a lot of breaks.
How do you think the jury feels about Bev talking to them in her high school teacher voice?
I know that we don't want us to waste your time.
with the smiling and
I'll tell you, whenever she talks to the lawyers about wasting the jury's time and about them being fed up, to me that speaks of just a lack of seriousness that she has about this whole thing.
Yeah.
You can't be concerned with the jury's personal lives and how annoyed they might be at having to wait outside the courtroom when you're arguing motions that could end up with reversible errors or could end up sending a woman to prison. Like somebody's convenience is not a reason to make those choices. And it makes me, if I was a juror, I would be like, I signed up for this. I said I could be here. I'm here. Like, let me hear it all.
There's a woman's life on the line and somebody's dead. And also when she makes the comments like, the lawyers have worked so hard to bring this case to you. It's like, that's not what this is about.
Nope.
It's not about the lawyers. It's about Karen Read.
That's right.
Ugh.
All right, Mel. Well, I'm sure you'll be watching tomorrow, as will I.
I will.
And I'm sure we'll talk about it some more.
I'm sure we will.
I'm looking forward to a little Rentschler action. I think that guy is great. So
I am too.
All right, we'll see what happens. And thank you so much for unpacking all this with me today. It was a lot.
Of course. Thanks, Rebecca.